So, what to do if your child is throwing things? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, I've gotten this question quite a bit. I've gotten this question quite often, and really, it's a very easy and straightforward fix. But there's two different scenarios, so we'll talk about those. Okay, so let's say that your toddler is sitting at the table and they throw their food or they throw their utensils or whatnot. So, what do you do about that? So, here's what you do. You don't do have no anger and no yelling, okay? And so first be calm. That's the first rule for all of the things we do, right? Okay, so next thing you do is you look them straight in the eye and you put your eyebrows down, you lower your tone, and you say no throwing. Now by doing that, you have now taught them, you have given them information that that is not an appropriate thing to do. So throwing is not appropriate. And you've just now let them know that. So before you ever train them, meaning teaching is, again, putting the information into their mind, and training is using that information in action. So now that you've taught them, they have the information. Then the next time is when you start the training. Okay, so you can assume that they're probably going to still throw it if you just say that, and that's not going to end it, right? So there's kind of three kinds of children I want to talk about and what they're going to do in this situation. Okay, there's the very compliant child. Now, the very compliant child is the one that generally is going to want to obey you. They want to please you, so they want to do the right thing, and so they're going to just do it. But most of the time, even the compliant child, when they're first presented with a challenge like this, they're usually still going to challenge and see. Okay, but they're gonna go, I wonder what she means by that, and they're gonna kind of throw it again, right? Then there's the seesaw child. I call them the seesaw child because they go back and forth between tending towards compliant and tending towards strong-willed. And the reason they seesaw is because it depends on what's going on in their life at the moment, how they're feeling at the time, but they kind of seesaw back and forth a little bit. So I had one out of my 9, I had one who was compliant, I had 7 who were seesaw, and I had 1 who was strong-willed. And those who know my family probably can figure out which one was strong-willed. But anyway, so the seesaw children are going to be curious. They're going to go, I wonder what she would do if I did this again, or he. What would mom or dad do if I throw it again? And then there's the strong-willed one who's going to go, she's not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to throw that again, right? So you're going to have 3 reactions. One is going to be like this, the compliant, kind of throw it and see. Then there's going to be the curious one who's going to go and look at you like this and wonder what's going to happen. Then there's going to be the strong-willed one who's going to go and throw it and look at you, right? Okay. So depending on which child you're talking to at that time will depend. But probably all of them, if you haven't already established that you're in charge in some other areas, they're probably going to throw anyway the second time. Okay, so what do you do after they throw it the second time? You do the same thing with one variation. Okay, you're going to look them straight in the eye, low tone. I forgot the last part. You put the item back in front of them. Okay, so you're going to say in a low tone, eyebrows down, straight in the eye, no throwing. And then you put the item back in front of them. Okay, now let's say it's canned peaches. Okay, you don't want to take them off the floor, right? Get another canned peach and put it in front of them or whatever, if you can't give them the thing that was on the floor. Okay, and you put it right in front of them. Now, this is different than experts say, because experts say you want to manipulate their environment. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. On these webcasts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer the question, and then I'm going to go and see what experts say. Okay. And why I don't usually agree. Not always, but usually I don't. So, okay, so now they've thrown it the second time. So now you're going to do the same thing, low tone, straight in the eye, no throwing. Then you're going to, after you say that, you're going to flick their hand. Now, I'm not talking wham. I'm not talking anything. It's not even going to hurt. It's going to be more like shocking. They're going to be shocked that you've done something like that. Okay. And I can do this 10 times on my hand. It doesn't even turn red. Okay. We're not talking anything, but it's shocking. They won't like it. It's uncomfortable. Right. And that's okay. Because remember, if you're doing something that makes your child uncomfortable while they're misbehaving, that's great, because you don't want them to be comfortable when they're misbehaving. Okay. So you flick them on the hand and you put it back in front of them. And you can repeat that if you want, no throwing. Okay. Then you go back about your business and doing whatever you're doing. It's all over and you're done. Now, I know some of you are saying, yeah, they're going to scream, they're going to cry. That's okay. Let them have a moment to get over it and to have the shock. Okay. So this is now, depending on how they're doing it. Now, last time I was on the live stream, I talked about what to do if they throw a tantrum, a fit. So the difference between them just crying because they were upset over that is if they're screaming and arching their back and hitting their hands on the tray or the table, that would be a tantrum. And then you want to go back to the thing that we talked about, the CTM method. So if you don't know what that is, look on my YouTube channel for the video that talks about what to do about tantrums, okay? But usually they're not going to really throw a tantrum over this. They're going to cry, they're going to be upset, and give them a minute to get over it, okay? So they'll get over it. And then go about your business and continue. If they do it again, you do this every single time and you do it immediately. Okay. You don't wait. You don't see if they're going to do it again. You just immediately give them the item back, say no throwing, flick them on the hand. And the next time, if it's the third time, you might do it a little harder. No, still, it's not going to be no abuse. We're not talking about abuse here. A little flick on the hand, no throwing. Now, they're not going to like that. And that's okay. That's okay that they don't like that. So I want you to remember in what I'm trying to convey to parents is that the whole purpose of this isn't really about them not throwing. It's really about teaching them to behave. It's really about training them to behave. Okay. Just like the tantrum thing was really about teaching them to behave, not necessarily the tantrum, but teaching them to behave. And the reason that's different is because if you're doing it to stop the throwing, then if they throw it once, you're just like, oh, well, you just won't give it back to them because then they won't throw, right? But the idea is when you see them behaving in some way that isn't appropriate, think of that as an exciting moment for you as a parent. I have the opportunity right now to teach them and train them to behave. This is an opportunity for me to teach them and train them to behave. So I'm going to take that opportunity, all right? And I'm going to use that to help them learn how to behave, okay? So that's the reason that you don't want to let it go. So you don't want to let them throw things several times, and after you're frustrated, then you try this. Don't do it that way. So let's say you're a mom right now and the throwing's been happening. The first time you do this, make it the first time they throw the next time you're saying that you go for kitchen for lunch today and they throw something. Do it now and then do it forever. And you won't have to do it forever because they'll stop doing it. This will stop them from doing it, which is the plan, right? So you do it from now on because you can only start where you are, right? That's all you can do. You can start where you are. So don't worry about what they've done in the past. Start training now and move on from there. Now, if you do this every time, it will probably take one meal and you're done. Maybe two. If you have a really, really strong-willed child, maybe three, but usually you don't go to three. Usually not. If you flick them on the hand and you say that in low tone, you put it right back in front of them, they're not going to do it anymore. Okay, so that is the main thing. Now, when I taught this before, I had a question, and one of the questions I had was, what do I do if they're throwing sand outside? Okay, that's really a different scenario. It's still throwing, right? But it's a different scenario. So what do you do then? All right, so the reason it's different is because with sitting at the table, you don't want the consequence to be, if I throw this food, I don't have to eat it. Obviously, they could use that to their advantage, correct? They could go, okay, I don't like this food, throw. Oh, now I don't have to eat it. Mom's taking it away, right? That wouldn't work out well. So when they're on the playground and say they're throwing sand, that's different because they want to be there and they want to play. So the consequence can be different. All right. So let's say they're on the playground and they're throwing sand. So the first thing to do is to bring them over. And again, think of that exciting moment where you, as a parent, get to teach them something, get to train them to behave. So bring them over to you. And if you haven't told them this before, I'm assuming that they haven't really been taught before. Not that you haven't said, don't throw sand, and then they have done it again. I'm talking about you want to bring them over to you and have an eye to eye conversation and say, I do not want you to throw sand. And here's why. Now, this is different because I don't think it's necessary that you always say why. But in this case, you get an opportunity to give them some information. And I think it's wise to give them information. Don't do it if they're being defiant or if they're being strong-willed against you or something like that. Then you don't have a conversation. But I'm assuming this is a child who's out there and they're just having fun. They don't realize this isn't right and they're throwing sand because that looks fun. Okay. Bring them over to you and say, look in the eye and say, do not throw sand. Let's talk about what would happen if sand is thrown. If you throw sand, it could end up in someone's eye and then they could have to go to the hospital. They could have to go to the doctor or something, and you don't want to hurt anyone. And secondly, the sand is supposed to stay inside the playground. If you look out there, there's grass out there, right? Or there's concrete, whatever. And there's not sand because sand goes in this area. So don't throw it because you could hurt someone and because it makes the sand go where it shouldn't go. So don't do that. You could also get in someone's hair, and that's awful, right? So have a conversation with them. Say, no, I don't want to see you throwing sand again. If you decide to do that, you don't get to play over there. Okay? So that's your choice. If you do it, you're done playing over there. Normally, that'll stop it. They're done. If they do it, bring them back over, and now they're done. They don't get to play there anymore today. All right? So, and then if they throw a tantrum, remember to go to the CTM method. And if you've already been doing that, they probably won't. But let's say you're new at this, go on over to the CTM method and stop that tantrum, okay? I also want to tell you, before I get to the article today, that I am developing an online course. It's called How to Train Your Toddler to Behave, and it will be ready, available in the next couple of months. So now we're going to go and see what the experts say about what to do if your child is throwing things. So I put that in as a search like I do for these live webcasts. And I put in, what do you do if your toddler is throwing things? So this is from the babycenter.com. All right. And there's an associate dean of Family Center, the Family Center at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, called Ronnie Lederman. Okay. So he says what to do about it. He says, it's futile to try to stop your child from throwing at this age. I think that is horrible to say because it's not true. And it's not hopeful, right? It's not futile. You can teach your child not to throw at this age. At any age, you can teach them. Oh, yes, I do want to mention that too. You know how people say, if I do this, then my child will be confused. So you say, don't throw. Well, then they'll be confused because they get to throw a ball, or they get to throw a beanbag, or, whatever. No, they're not. They can figure it out. Children have a lot more intelligence than people give them credit for. Okay. If they're sitting at the table and they're throwing food and you say, don't throw, they'll know you don't mean a ball when you're outside. Especially when you're throwing the ball to them and having them throw it back to you. They're going to be able to figure that out. So don't worry about that. Okay. So he says, first, it's futile to stop your child from throwing at this age, which I totally disagree with. And then he says, concentrate instead on limiting what he throws and where he throws it with these tips. Okay. So instead of teaching him not to do it, here's how to avoid it, is basically what he's saying. Okay. Then he changes to her instead of he. Show her what she can throw. So when she throws something inappropriate like a shoe, calmly take it away from her and say, shoes aren't for throwing, but balls are. Then give her a ball to play with. Okay, so what he has just done by saying that is said, well, if she throws a shoe, say, don't do that and give her a reward. That ain't going to teach her not to throw the shoe next time. It isn't going to do that. It's just going to make her think, okay, if I want my mom or dad's attention, I can throw something and they're going to give me a toy. I don't agree with that at all. Discourage his aggressive throwing. What should you do when your toddler does throw something he shouldn't? Sand from the sandbox, for instance, or blocks at another child. It looks like he's gotten the same questions I have. As much as possible, try to ignore it the first few times it happens. As you can see, this is a different mindset than I have. My mindset is, oh, an opportunity to train them and teach them. His thought is, oh, ignore it for a while, maybe it'll go away. If he knows he can get your attention by throwing something he shouldn't at someone, he's likely to do it again. No, I don't really think so, because I don't think the reason he's throwing sand in the sandbox is to get mom and dad's attention. I think he's throwing it because it looks like fun, you know? If your child often comes close to hurting other children by throwing things at them, say, no, that hurts, and pull him aside for a quick timeout to call attention to the no. Okay, I disagree with the idea that all you're doing is trying to stop them from hitting or throwing. My idea is instead train them not to do that. Stop them by training them not to do that, not by physically stopping them, but train them not to do it by what I've said. Okay, so the next thing he says, well, it's not the next. He has some other things in the middle here about timeout and stuff like that. If he persists in throwing things in a hurtful manner, even though you've tried to deter him calmly and consistently, you may have no choice but to keep a close eye on the toys he plays with and shadow him while he plays with them. So in other words, parents, what you have to do, if you can't stop him from doing it by deterring him or distracting him, then you have to sit and oversee him the whole time he's playing with his toys. See, again, it's a thing where I'm going to manipulate the environment around the child so that they can't disobey me or do anything wrong. And then if I can't manipulate it enough, then I'm going to stand over him and make sure that he doesn't by physically stopping him from doing something. See, it's a totally different mindset than what I have. What I have is you train them to behave. You teach them what to do and what not to do. And then you let them practice it. Okay. So the next suggestion, fasten her toys to her seat. When she's in her stroller or car seat, try attaching a few playthings within easy reach. So the idea is let her have time to throw things, and when she's throwing these things, then she'll have a string that she can pull them back, and that will be a fun game. Now, I don't think that that's really a bad thing. I don't, but not in relation to teaching her not to throw. Just because I would attach things to the car seat just because they're playing with it and they drop it, and that way they can get it back easy, you know? So I think that's fine to do that, but it's not training them not to throw things, you know? You need to train them not to throw things. Clean up together. Now, this is interesting. This is interesting because I kind of agree with it, clearly for a different reason. Clean up together. Don't ask your toddler to pick up everything he throws. That's an overwhelming task for a child this age, says Lederman. Okay, I'll talk about that in a minute. Instead, try getting down on your hands and knees together and enlisting his help by saying, let's see how fast we can pick up the blocks together. Now, okay, if he's thrown 2 or 3 blocks, that's not overwhelming. He can pick that up and say, you need to go pick those up. Don't throw those, you know. But if, let's say he's dumped a bucket of blocks all over the floor, and that is overwhelming for him. I mean, let's say he's 2 or 3, that's a lot. And so, you also want to take every opportunity you can to build your relationship with your child. So once you've trained them and taught them, it's reasonable to say, hey, why don't we pick those up together? That's fine. That's fine to do that. But you're doing it so you can build your relationship with them. So they understand that you have compassion, you're kind, you're helpful, you're thinking of the needs of others, and they see that as a good example. So I think that's fine. But it depends on the reasoning that he has here. Sit with him at meal times. Oh my goodness, seriously. Of course you're going to sit with him at meal times anyway if they're little. But this is a messy eating stage, but you can often avoid the worst of it by sitting with your toddler while he eats. That way you're right there. Oh, this is something. That way you're right there to gently but firmly tell him no when he makes a move to toss his lunch and to hold his plate down with your hand if need be. No, I'm sorry. That is just, in other words, you're going to fight with toddler. I'm holding the plate and he's trying to peel it and we're going to be struggling like that. No, I totally disagree with that. You should be teaching your child not to throw. Now, listen to this next part. Use toddler proof dishes. Interesting. Try getting her a special toddler dish with suction cups that fasten to the table or high chair tray so she can't pick up the dish. Again, I agree with getting that kind, but not so she can't pick up the dish, and I'll tell why. Keep in mind, though, that while these work well enough that a casual grab won't send her dish scuttling across the floor, they won't stop a child who's amazed to find her dish stuck and is determined to pry it off. Okay, here's the thing that I think about that. Having one of those suction cup, bowls or whatever is great. And the reason it's great isn't because you can't keep your child from throwing it, because you can keep your child from throwing it by teaching them not to. But because when they're using their little hands or they're learning how to use utensils and the bowl is or a plate is moving around, obviously that makes it more difficult for them to learn. So having it stuck there so that they can, scoop up the food, that's fine because it helps them learn. That's great. But you don't do things by securing something to keep them from throwing it, because instead you just teach them not to throw it. And that comes out in the next part here where it says, to minimize spills, give beverages in a cup with a snap-on lid. You can also try handing your child the cup when she's ready for a drink, but keeping it out of reach between sips. Totally disagree with that. I believe you should put the sippy cup lid on, just because that makes it easier. Obviously, they're little and they could accidentally spill it and that would be a big mess. Obviously, that's reasonable, but it's not because she'll throw it. Okay. I would put the juice or the milk or the water or whatever in a sippy cup and set it on their tray. And if they throw, you go through that throwing method of no, no throwing, and flick them on the hand and you're done. And you put it there and let them pick it up and have self-control, which they can. They can have self-control. They can. So you put it on their tray and you let them have the opportunity to obey. Give them the opportunity to obey. Give them the opportunity to do the right thing. Don't take away all the opportunity that they can, where they can learn self-control and learn how to behave themselves. Give them the opportunity to learn it. Okay. So see, in he's about avoiding and about manipulating the environment so they can't disobey, rather than giving them the opportunity to do the right thing. I believe in giving them that opportunity and then training them to do the right thing. Okay. Next thing is stick to small portions. You'll waste less of your, this is interesting. You'll waste less and your toddler will have less ammunition if you serve him tiny portions of finger food and hold off on dishing up more until he's eaten what's there. Okay, once again, I agree that you should give them small portions. I think that's a wise thing to do. First of all, because if you're going to say eat all your food, which I assume most of you kind of want them to eat all their food, right? If you're going to do that, then you don't want to give them too much of an overwhelming amount to eat. So you give them a small amount and then give them a small amount again, so they can eat what you give them. But it's not so they won't throw it or so that they don't have enough ammunition. Again, I don't agree with the whole preface of that idea, okay? Most kids don't start throwing their food until they've finished eating and grown bored. So no matter how much he's eaten, take your toddler's food flinging as a sign that he's finished his meal. To avoid teaching him that flinging food is the right way to end a meal, calmly remind him food isn't for throwing before removing him from the table or high chair. So in other words, you are rewarding him with what he wants, but you're saying, oh, don't do that. And then you're giving him what he wants anyway, which is he wants to get down. Okay. That is totally not the thing to do. The thing to do is to do what I said, look him in the eye, say no throwing, low tone, and put the item back in front of him and wait a few minutes. Then you can, after you waited a few minutes, you say, are you finished eating? And if he says yes, then you take him down. But you don't allow him to throw it and then give him the reward of getting down for that. Because the next day, when he's bored and he's ready to get down, he'll just throw food because that worked yesterday, right? It worked yesterday, so it's going to work today, right? That's what he's going to say. So that's the answer to what to do about throwing. If you have any questions, the only chat I've gotten so far on here is from Nanette. So I'm not sure if there's anybody else that has a question, but if you have a question, you can type it in the chat or you can type it in the comments and I will answer. Even if I'm not answering right now live, I will answer your questions. I will message you or whatever. I'll put the answer in the comments. So be sure and comment. I'd love to hear from you. And remember to subscribe to my channel. I'd love to see you next Thursday here at 10 o'clock. So I'll see you then. Bye-bye.